In the misty Appalachian foothills, two estranged sisters were about to unlock a door they'd been warned never to open. What started as a reluctant trip to collect a worthless inheritance took a shocking turn when they came face to face with 200 years of buried secrets. Abigail Whitmore wasn't your typical debt collector. For 15 years, she had spent her life chasing truth as an investigative journalist, known for making powerful people pay in print what they owed the public in answers. When she and her sister Margaret received iron keys to a crumbling Revolutionary War castle, they had no idea they were walking into a multi-generational conspiracy. Abigail wanted to sell immediately and return to the city. Margaret wanted to believe in something bigger than both of them. That thing would lead to the discovery of an affidavit that could change everything or cost them their only chance at reconciliation. What began as an $18,000 tax burden would become a battle against a ruthless historian, corrupt documents, and their own fractured relationship. The loyalist keep would never be the same after these sisters chose to become guardians instead of heirs. And neither would they. When we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'd collected debts in my own way for years, debts of truth, debts of story. People owed the public answers, and I made them pay in print, but I'd never driven 6 hours through winding mountain roads to collect an inheritance I didn't want. The probate notice had arrived on recycled paper with a coffee stain in the corner. The bequest, one crumbling castle in Appalachian. The beneficiary, me and my sister Maggie, jointly. The last time we'd spoken was Christmas 2 years ago, and that conversation had ended with her hanging up on me. I parked outside Caldwell & Sons estate law at exactly 2 p.m. Maggie's sedan was already there. Dusty from the drive, she'd always been punctual. It was one of the many ways we were different. The probate office smelled like old files and air freshener that wasn't winning the battle. Behind a desk stacked with leather binders sat a man who looked like he'd been part of the furniture since the 70s. Mr. Caldwell, presumably. One of the sons, probably. Maggie sat in the waiting area, her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a dental cleaning. She looked up when I entered. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, more grey at the temples. Abby, her voice was neutral. Careful, Maggie. I took the chair across from her, leaving one empty seat between us. Close enough for civility, far enough for honesty. Ms. Whitmore and Ms. Whitmore. Caldwell stood, adjusting reading glasses that hung on a beaded chain. Thank you both for coming. I understand you've traveled some distance. What exactly did Great-Aunt Vera leave us? I asked. I'd never met Vera. Couldn't even picture her face. Caldwell opened a folder, thick enough to be a manuscript. The property known locally as Loyalist Keep, approximately 40 acres in the Appalachian foothills, including the main structure and outbuildings. Built in 1784 by RMI 1784. Maggie leaned forward. That's right after the Revolution. Indeed, built by a British loyalist named Cornelius Blackwood, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1789. Caldwell's tone suggested he'd given this speech before. The property passed through several hands before your great-aunt acquired it in. She lived there until her death last month at age 94. I pulled out my phone and typed Loyalist Keep Appalachia into the search bar. The results were sparse. A few local history blogs, a paranormal investigation website, a real estate listing from 15 years ago marked withdrawn. The place is a ruin, I said, scrolling through photos of collapsed stonework and shattered windows. What's the property tax situation? Caldwell cleared his throat. Currently in arrears. Approximately $18,000. Maggie's sharp intake of breath told me she hadn't expected that number. Neither had I, so we inherit a condemned building and a tax bill. I closed my phone. What are our options for selling? Abby. Maggie's voice had an edge. We haven't even seen it yet. I've seen the photo. It's got 4 walls, and 3 of them are falling down. It's history. It's family legacy. It's a money pit with a mortgage made of rot. Caldwell raised one hand like a referee. Before you decide anything, there are items your great-aunt left specifically for you both. He produced a wooden box from beneath his desk, the kind of box that looked handmade, with dovetail joints and a brass clasp. Maggie reached for it first. Her fingers traced the carved initials on the lid, VHW Vera Henrietta Whitmore. Inside, packed in tissue paper, were 3 objects: an iron keyring holding 5 keys of various sizes, all black with age, a folded piece of paper sealed with red wax, the kind you saw in period dramas, and a yellowed property tax notice, with an official seal I didn't recognize. The keys are to the keep, Caldwell explained. Whitmore was very specific. Both sisters must visit the property together before any decisions are made about its future. That's not legally binding, I said. No, but it was her wish. Maggie lifted the wax-sealed paper carefully. The wax had cracked in places, revealing edges of a map underneath. What is this? I don't know. Your great-aunt's instructions were to give you the box unopened. The property tax notice was stranger. The emblem at the top showed a compass rose, but the west point was missing, just blank space where it should have been. The amount listed was 37 cents. The date was 1791. This can't be real, I said. Paper wouldn't survive that long, not in this condition, unless someone preserved it deliberately, Maggie murmured. She was using her teacher voice, the one that made students pay attention. Unless it was important. I looked at my sister properly for the first time since I'd arrived. She had that gleam in her eye, the one that used to get us into trouble when we were kids, when she dragged me into the woods to explore abandoned houses or convince me to stay up late reading about pirates and lost cities. We should at least look, she said, before we decide. Maggie, I have a life in the city, deadlines, responsibilities, and I have a classroom full of students who think history is boring because it's all textbooks and standardized tests. Her voice cracked slightly. When do we ever get something like this? Something real? Before I could answer, the office door opened. A man in his 50s entered without knocking. Expensive jacket, leather satchel, the kind of confident stride that said he was used to being the smartest person in the room. Excuse me, Caldwell said, rising. We're in the middle of a private, Professor Roland Graves. The man extended his hand first to Maggie, then to me. His grip was firm, too firm. Local historian. I apologize for the intrusion, but I happened to be in the building filing research permits, and I couldn't help but overhear you mention Loyalist Keep. The office wasn't that big. He'd definitely been eavesdropping. I've been researching the keep for over a decade, Graves continued, pulling a business card from his jacket. If you're planning to visit, I'd be happy to provide historical context. The place has a fascinating past, quite valuable from an academic perspective. Valuable how? I asked. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The Revolutionary War period in this region is poorly documented. Blackwood's Keep is one of the few intact structures from that era. With proper authentication, it could be significant enough to warrant a historian showing up at a probate reading. I slipped his card into my pocket without looking at it. I maintain alerts for any legal filings related to historic properties. His smile widened. Professional interest only, I assure you. We haven't decided anything yet, Maggie said, but her tone was warmer than mine. She'd always been the trusting one. Of course, but please do reach out if you'd like a consultation. No charge for an initial assessment. Graves nodded to Caldwell. My apologies again for the interruption. He left as smoothly as he'd arrived. Through the window, I watched him climb into a black SUV. New model. Expensive. That was weird, I said. That was convenient, Caldwell corrected. Professor Graves has attempted to access the keep 3 times in the past 5 years. Your great-aunt refused him each time. Why? Maggie asked. She never explained, simply said the property wasn't ready for outside eyes. I picked up the iron keys. They were heavy, cold in my palm, the kind of weight that felt like responsibility. There's one more thing, Caldwell said. A woman named Evelyn Harker called yesterday. She's a local caretaker, lives near the keep. She wanted me to pass along a message. He consulted his notes. Don't go up before dusk. The keep chooses its hour. Maggie's eyes went wide. I felt my journalist instincts kick in, the kind that smelled a story. Did she explain what that means? I asked. No, but she was quite insistent. I looked at the keys in my hand, at the sealed map fragment, at my sister, who was practically vibrating with excitement, despite trying to hide it. One visit, I said. We look, we document, we make a rational decision based on facts and finances. Thank you. Maggie's smile was genuine. For a moment she looked like the sister I'd grown up with, before careers and distance had carved valleys between us. We left the office with the wooden box between us. The afternoon sun was already starting to dip toward the ridgeline. In the parking lot, Maggie paused by her car. Follow me, she asked. I looked up directions. It's about 40 minutes into the mountains. Before dusk, the caretaker said. We have time. I glanced at the horizon where clouds were gathering. Fog rolled over the peaks like something living. Do we? But I got in my car anyway. Started the engine, watched Maggie pull out of the lot, and followed her taillights toward whatever inheritance Great Aunt Vera had left us. The keys sat heavy in my pocket. They felt like they'd been waiting a long time to be used. The road to Loyalist Keep wasn't on my GPS. Maggie navigated by handwritten directions she'd gotten from somewhere, leading us up a series of switchbacks that got narrower with each turn. Pine trees pressed close on both sides. The setting sun filtered through branches like light through cathedral windows. I'd driven through rough country before, chasing stories, but something about this felt different. The air was thicker here, heavier, like the mountains were holding their breath. Maggie's brake lights flashed red as she pulled onto what barely qualified as a driveway, more like two dirt tracks with grass growing between them. I parked behind her and killed the engine. For a moment, neither of us got out. We just stared. Loyalist Keep rose from the fog, like something that shouldn't exist. Not in modern-day America, not anywhere outside a European postcard. 3 stories of dark stone, towers at each corner, narrow windows that looked less like architecture and more like watching eyes. The photos hadn't done it justice, or maybe they'd been too kind. Half the roof tiles were missing. One tower had collapsed entirely, leaving a gap-toothed silhouette against the darkening sky. The main entrance was a massive wooden door bound in iron, hanging slightly crooked on its hinges. But despite the decay, despite the obvious neglect, the place had presence, weight, like it was holding itself upright through sheer stubbornness. Jesus, I whispered. Maggie stepped out of her car. It's beautiful. It's a tetanus shot waiting to happen. It's ours. I joined her in front of the keep. The temperature had dropped at least 10 degrees. My breath misted in the air. Behind us, the sun was touching the horizon, turning the sky the color of a bruise. We should have brought flashlights, I said. I have one in my car. Maggie's voice was distant. She was already walking toward the entrance, drawn like a moth to flame. The wooden box from the probate office sat on my passenger seat. I grabbed it along with my phone, checking for signal. 1 bar. Better than nothing. The iron keys felt colder than they should have. In my pocket, Maggie was already at the entrance, running her fingers over the door's iron bindings. Look at the craftsmanship. These hinges are hand-forged. And the door itself, it's oak, probably 8 inches thick. Can we get inside before it's completely dark? She tried the handle. Locked. Give me the keys. I handed her the ring. The first 3 keys didn't fit. The 4th slid in smoothly, turned with a click that echoed louder than I should have. The door swung open with a groan that could have been metal or could have been something else. The interior smelled of old stone, wood smoke, and something underneath I couldn't identify. Not quite decay, more like preservation, like the air itself had been waiting. Maggie's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a great hall that stretched deeper than the beam could reach. The ceiling soared 2 stories up, crossed with massive wooden beams. A fireplace dominated the far wall, large enough to roast a whole pig. Furniture sat arranged as if someone might return at any moment. Chairs, tables, a sideboard with pewter candlesticks. "Someone's been maintaining this," I said, my voice echoing strangely, "but the outside looks abandoned." "Exactly." I pulled out my phone, turned on its flashlight, and swept the room. The beam caught something on the floor. Not dust patterns, footprints, recent ones, leading from the entrance to a hallway on the left, then disappearing into darkness. Maggie, she followed my light, saw what I saw. Maybe the caretaker. Evelyn, maybe. But my journalist instincts were screaming. Something was off. The whole place felt like a stage set, abandoned on the outside, maintained on the inside, and those footprints were fresh. Days old, not decades. We moved deeper into the hall. Maggie's light found the fireplace, and she made a small sound of discovery. "Abby, look." The fireplace's brick interior had chalk marks. Dozens of them, tally marks arranged in groups of 5, scratched directly into the stone. I counted quickly, 47 groups. 235 marks total. "What are they counting?" Maggie whispered. Above the mantel, carved into the wooden beam, was a symbol, a compass rose, beautifully detailed, but like the emblem on the property tax notice, the west point was missing. Just smooth wood, where it should have been. "That's the same symbol from the document," I said. "The missing west point. It has to mean something." I photographed everything with my phone, the marks, the compass, the arrangement of furniture. A journalist's habit. Document first, interpret later. Maggie had wandered toward the hallway where the footprints led. Her light disappeared around a corner. "Abby, come see this." I found her standing in front of an iron door, not wood like the others, solid iron, set flush with the stone wall, with a lock plate that looked newer than the rest of the keep. No rust, no age, recent installation trying to look old. "Try the keys," I said. She did. None of them fit the lock, but when she pressed her ear against the door, she went very still. "What?" "Listen." I pressed my ear against the cold iron. At first nothing. Then I heard it. A faint sound like wind moving through a hollow space, or breathing. The kind of deep, slow breathing that happened in vast, empty places. "There's space behind this," Maggie said. "A lot of space, or it opens to the outside somewhere." In the middle of the keep, I stepped back, studying the door's placement. It didn't make architectural sense. The wall should have been load-bearing. No reason for a hollow cavity behind it. Unless it wasn't a cavity. Unless it was a passage. We continued our exploration. The keep sprawled, larger than it looked from outside. Rooms led to more rooms. Staircases wound up and down. Some sections felt stable. Others made the floor quake ominously under our weight. In what must have been a study, Maggie found a banister with scratches carved into the wood. Deliberate marks at different heights. "Look, children's growth marks." I bent closer. Each mark had initials and a date. E.H. 1957, 1958, 1958. Different hand. Same initials, and at the top, fresh enough that I could see wood grain in the cut. "E.H. to O.H. I said. "Evelyn Harker, multiple generations, or one very long-lived caretaker." Maggie's laugh was nervous. "Don't joke about that here." But I wasn't entirely joking. The keep had that quality. The feeling that time moved differently within its walls, that decades could pass like days, or days stretch into years. A sound made us both freeze, soft, deliberate, the pad of paws on stone. From the shadows emerged a cat, completely black except for its eyes, which reflected our flashlight beams like copper coins. It sat in a doorway we hadn't noticed before, watching us with the patience of something that had been waiting a very long time. "Hey there," Maggie said softly, extending her hand. The cat didn't approach. Instead, it turned and squeezed through a gap in the wainscoting. A gap just wide enough for a cat, or a child, or someone who knew exactly where to look. "There are crawl spaces," I said. "Behind the walls, servants' passages, common in houses this old, or escape routes." I photographed the gap, the wainscoting's placement, the pattern of the wooden panels. Everything was data. Everything might matter. By the time we'd done a rough circuit of the accessible rooms, night had fallen completely outside the narrow windows. My phone showed 9:47 p.m. We'd been exploring for over 2 hours. It had felt like 20 minutes. "We should set up camp," Maggie said. "I brought sleeping bags. You planned to stay here?" I hoped we might. We made a temporary base in the great hall, dragging furniture to create a rough bedroom. The fireplace looked functional, but neither of us wanted to risk it without checking the chimney first. Maggie had packed sandwiches and water. We ate in silence, our flashlights casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I'm sorry," Maggie said quietly, "for the way things ended. At Christmas. I'm sorry too, and I meant it. I shouldn't have said what I said about your job. You weren't wrong, teaching the same curriculum year after year, watching kids zone out during lectures about the Constitutional Convention." She pulled her sleeping bag tighter. "But this is real. This matters. We still don't know what this is, but we will. That's why we're here, to find out." I wanted to argue, to remind her about the tax bill, the repairs, the impossibility of maintaining a place like this. But the words died in my throat, because she was right. We'd come here to find out what Great-Aunt Vera had left us. And it wasn't just a crumbling castle, it was a question. Around midnight, as I was drifting towards sleep, I heard it, faint but distinct. Tap, tap, Pratmic, deliberate, coming from somewhere behind the walls, from the direction of the iron door. Maggie's breathing was steady. Asleep, I lay in my sleeping bag, staring at the darkness, listening to something tap out a pattern I couldn't quite decipher. Tap, tap, pause, tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. Not random, not pipes. Not settling. A code. Someone, or something, was trying to communicate. I didn't sleep much after that. Morning light transformed the keep. What had felt oppressive and watchful in the darkness now looked merely old. Sunbeams cut through high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. The stone walls were honey-colored in the dawn, almost welcoming. Almost. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I rolled out of my sleeping bag stiff and cold. Maggie was already up, standing by one of the windows with her phone out, photographing something. "Look at this," she said without turning around. I joined her. The window frame had markings carved into it. Not decorative, deliberate. A series of symbols that looked like a combination of letters and geometric shapes. Time and layers of paint had nearly obscured them, but in the right light, they were visible. "These are all over the place," Maggie continued. "Once you know to look for them. Chair rails, door frames, floorboards. Someone marked this entire building." I pulled out the wooden box from the probate office and opened the sealed map fragment. The wax cracked easily, revealing aged paper underneath. It showed a rough floor plan of the keep, but with additional notations in faded ink. Symbols that matched the ones carved into the woodwork. "It's a guide," I said slowly. "Someone mapped the markings, but guide to what?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps on gravel outside. Maggie and I exchanged glances. She grabbed a piece of firewood from the stack by the hearth. I picked up a candlestick, heavy enough to be useful. We moved to the entrance. Through the gap in the doorway, I saw a figure approaching. Elderly woman. grey hair pulled back, wool coat. Despite the season, she carried a metal thermos and what looked like a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. "Evelyn Harker," Maggie breathed. I opened the door. The woman stopped a respectful distance away, her eyes sharp despite her age. She had the kind of face that had seen things, that held secrets like a vault, held valuables. "You came up in the dark," she said. "Not an accusation, an observation. We wanted to see it before deciding what to do with it," I replied. "And what have you decided?" "We're still looking." Evelyn nodded slowly as if this was the answer she'd expected. "Your great-aunt said you'd come, both of you. Together. She said you'd know to look." She held out the thermos and bread. "Coffee's still hot. Bread's from yesterday, but it's good." Maggie took them. "Thank you. That's kind. Kindness has nothing to do with it. This is protocol." Evelyn's eyes moved past us, scanning the interior of the keep. "You found the markings?" "Yes," I said. "What do they mean?" "That depends. What do you think they mean?" I hated when people answered questions with questions, but I recognized a test when I saw one. Evelyn was measuring us, deciding something we think. "We think," Maggie said carefully, "that there's some kind of map or key to something inside the keep." "And do you think that something is worth finding?" "We don't know yet." "Good answer." Evelyn's expression softened fractionally. "Your great-aunt was the last guardian. Before her was my mother. Before her my grandmother. Line goes back to the beginning, to Blackwood himself." "Guardian of what?" I asked. "Of the truth nobody wanted found. Of the legacy everyone wanted to claim." She stepped closer, lowering her voice as if the keep itself might be listening. "Every generation chose. None were chosen for. You understand the difference? You're saying we have a choice. You're saying there's something here worth guarding," Maggie added. Evelyn smiled. It made her look younger. "Come, I'll show you something your great-aunt left for you specifically." She led us to a narrow staircase we'd missed in our evening exploration. It wound upward, tight and steep, the kind of stairs servants would have used. At the top was a door so short we had to duck through it. The room beyond was small, a mezzanine overlooking the great hall on one side, with a narrow window slit on the other, furnished with only a writing desk and a locked cabinet built into the wall. On the desk sat a leather-bound ledger, thick, old. The title was stamped in faded gold, "Custody of the Keep." I opened it carefully. The first page was dated 1784, handwritten in beautiful script. "I, Cornelius Blackwood, do hereby establish this record of guardianship for the keep and all it protects. Those who follow me must understand the burden they inherit. The treasure within is not gold alone, but truth, and truth is always worth defending." Below that, signatures, dozens of them, spanning centuries, each with the same notation: "Guardian, accepted." The last entry was dated 6 weeks ago, Vera Whitmore's shaking handwriting. "The time comes to pass the burden. May they choose wisely." Below that, 2 blank lines, "Waiting." "She knew she was dying," Maggie whispered. "She knew you were coming," Evelyn corrected. She produced a key from her coat pocket, small, iron, different from the ones we'd received at probate. "This fits the cabinet, and before you ask, I don't know what's inside." Each guardian keeps some secrets from even the next generation, preparation for those who choose. I took the key. It was warm from being in Evelyn's pocket. "You said there's a treasure. What kind of treasure are we talking about? The kind that could change everything, or destroy everything, depending on who finds it first." "Professor Graves," I said. "He wants access. Graves wants to claim it. There's a difference. He thinks possession means ownership. He doesn't understand that some things own you instead." Evelyn moved toward the door. "I'll leave you to decide, but know this. Once you open that cabinet, once you read what's inside, you can't unknow it. The burden becomes real." "What if we choose not to open it?" Maggie asked. "What if we just sell the place? Then someone else will find it eventually. Someone who won't understand the responsibility. Someone like Graves. Is that what you want? She left us alone in the small room with the ledger and the locked cabinet. I fit the key into the cabinet's lock. It turned smoothly. Inside were documents, yellowed papers, carefully preserved in waxed cloth, and beneath them another iron key, larger than the others, shaped differently. That's for the iron door, Maggie said immediately. It has to be. But when we tried it an hour later, standing in front of the door where we'd heard the tapping, the key slid in but wouldn't turn all the way. Like there was a secondary lock, or a mechanism that needed to be engaged from the inside. I pressed my ear against the iron again. This time, the hollow sound was unmistakable, and beneath it, very faint, I caught a scent. Cedar, old wood, and something metallic, like coins that had been underground for a long time. There's something behind here, I said. Something big. Maggie was reading the documents from the cabinet. Her face had gone pale. Abby, you need to see this. The papers were Revolutionary War era, property deeds, legal documents, and letters. Lots of letters, between Cornelius Blackwood and someone named Major Thaddeus Whitmore. Whitmore, our name. We're related to both of them, Maggie said. The loyalist and the patriot. They were cousins. That's impossible. It's documented. Look. She spread the papers on the floor. Blackwood was loyal to the crown. Whitmore fought for the revolution, but they were family. And according to these letters, they made some kind of agreement. I scanned the documents. The handwriting was difficult, but the gist was clear. Blackwood had hidden something before he disappeared, something valuable that he'd promised to Whitmore's descendants, but only if they could prove themselves worthy. It's a test, I said slowly. The whole keep is a test. The markings, the hidden chambers, the guardian system, all of it designed to filter out the unworthy, or to protect something until the right people found it. We were still reading when I heard an engine, distant but approaching. I moved to the window slit. A pickup truck was climbing the access road, county plates, construction equipment in the bed. Someone's coming, I said. Maggie joined me at the window. Maybe it's Evelyn. Evelyn walked here. And that's not her truck. The vehicle parked next to our cars. A man got out. Mid-30s. Work boots. Tool belt. He looked up at the keep with the expression of someone assessing a job. Then he started walking toward the entrance. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Daniel Pike. County sent me to assess structural damage for the condemnation report. No offense, but this place is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Condemnation report. Maggie's voice pitched higher. They can't condemn it. We just inherited it. My phone buzzed again. This time a call. The county tax office. I answered. The voice on the other end was bureaucratic and final. Ms. Whitmore, this is regarding property ID. We've received multiple complaints about structural hazards, and the tax arrears have triggered an automatic review. If the property isn't brought up to code within 45 days, and if back taxes aren't paid, we'll have no choice but to proceed with condemnation proceedings. The structure will be demolished for public safety. 45 days, I repeated, for Maggie's benefit. That's the standard timeline. I'm sorry. I know you just inherited the property, but the law is the law. The call ended. I looked at my sister, at the cabinet full of secrets, at the iron door we couldn't fully unlock, at the keep itself, this impossible castle in the mountains that held mysteries we were only beginning to understand. 45 days, Maggie said quietly, to decode 200 years of secrets, to repair a castle, to pay $18,000 in back taxes, to decide if we're guardians or just inheritors. Downstairs, Daniel Pike knocked on the door. Loud, official, the sound of the outside world demanding entry. I touched the iron key in my pocket, the one that fit but wouldn't turn, the one that promised answers we weren't quite ready for. We can't do this, I said. It's impossible. So was getting you to come here in the first place. Maggie smiled. It was sad and determined at the same time. But you came, we both did. Maybe that's the first test. Maybe everything after this is just details. Or maybe we're about to lose everything trying to hold on to something we don't understand. Only one way to find out. She started down the stairs to meet Daniel Pike, to face the deadline, to begin whatever came next. I took one last look at the custody of the keep ledger, at the blank lines waiting for our signatures, at the choice we hadn't yet made, but were already living with. Then I followed my sister into the great hall, toward the sound of knocking that wouldn't stop until we answered it. The keep watched us go, patient, ancient, waiting to see what we would choose, and what choosing would cost us. Daniel Pike turned out to be reasonable. That should have been my first warning. We met him at a diner 2 miles down the mountain, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. Daniel spread structural assessment forms across the table between plates of eggs and toast. "I'll be straight with you," he said, tapping a pen against the papers. "The keep needs about 80,000 in immediate repairs to meet code. New roof, foundation reinforcement, updated electrical. That's before we talk about the cosmetic work." Maggie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. 80,000? That's with me doing most of the labor at cost. You hire a commercial outfit, you're looking at double. I sipped my terrible coffee, and we have 45 days. Technically, you have 45 days to show progress and a payment plan. If the county sees you're serious, they might extend the deadline. Daniel leaned back. "The real question is whether you want to save it." "We're still deciding," I said. The diner bell chimed. Professor Roland Graves walked in like he owned the place. Like he'd known exactly where we'd be. He slid into the booth beside Maggie before either of us could object, setting a leather folder on the table. "Apologies for interrupting breakfast." His smile was practiced. "Perfect, but I've uncovered something you need to see." He opened the folder. Inside were photocopied documents. Land deeds, surveyor maps, legal filings, all marked with official-looking stamps. And signatures. "I've been researching the keep's provenance," Graves continued, "and I've found evidence that the original land grant was improperly executed. Blackwood was a loyalist. His properties should have been forfeited to the Commonwealth after the Revolution. The deed that passed to your great-aunt may not be legally valid." Maggie paled. "That's impossible. It's documented." He tapped the folder. "Multiple sources confirm it. Your inheritance could be challenged in court. And challenges are expensive." "What do you want?" I asked flatly. "To help. I'm prepared to sponsor your legal costs and contribute to the restoration in exchange for research access and a percentage of any historical assets discovered on the property." "What percentage?" 40% seems fair." I pulled the folder closer, studying the documents. The typeface looked wrong, too uniform for period documents, and the watermark on one page didn't match the others. "Where did you get these?" I asked. "County Archives, Historical Society, various sources. Can I keep these? Have them authenticated?" His smile tightened fractionally. "I'd prefer to maintain custody of the originals. These are photocopies." "Even so," I closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. "We'll pass. You're making a mistake. Without funding, you'll lose the keep to condemnation. Without legal support, you'll lose it to challenge. I'm offering you a lifeline." "We'll find our own lifeline," Maggie said quietly. Her voice was steady despite her pale face. Graves stood, taking his folder with him. "The offer stands for 48 hours. After that, I'll be pursuing my own claim through the courts." He left. The diner felt colder after he was gone. Daniel had been quiet through the whole exchange. Now he leaned forward. "You did the right thing." "How do you know?" I asked. "Because Graves has done this before. 3 times that I know of. He flatters heirs, offers to help, then uses research contracts to establish ownership claims. One family lost a historic mill, another lost an entire estate. Why didn't you warn us earlier?" I wanted to see if he'd try it with you first. Needed to know if you could spot a con. Daniel's expression was serious. He's going to come after the keep one way or another. You need to be ready. We paid the check and drove back up the mountain. I spent the drive searching for legal aid services, property rights attorneys, anyone who might help us for free or cheap. Maggie spent it staring out the window, not speaking. That night, someone cut the lock on the tool shed behind the keep. Daniel discovered it the next morning. Nothing was taken. Just a message. A reminder that we weren't alone up here, that other people wanted what we had, and they weren't going to ask politely anymore. The storm hit on our third night, the kind of mountain storm that turned the keep into something from a Gothic novel, all howling wind and rattling windows. Maggie and I patrolled by headlamp, checking for leaks and loose shutters. Rain hammered the stones like it was trying to wash the whole place back into the earth. Soot appeared from nowhere, the way cats do, but instead of seeking shelter, he fixated on one section of wall in the portrait gallery. Just sat there staring at the darkened painting of someone who might have been Cornelius Blackwood. "What's he looking at?" Maggie asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. I moved my headlamp across the wall. At first nothing, then lightning flashed, and for one brilliant second I saw it. Hairline cracks in the plaster, not random settling, a pattern, a shape. The missing west point of the compass rose. "Maggie, come here." We traced the cracks with our fingers. They formed a perfect geometric shape, like someone had scored the plaster deliberately, then painted over it. I pulled out my pocket knife and carefully worked it into the seam. The panel gave way with a soft click. Behind it was a hollow space, barely 6 inches deep. And inside that space, a copper tube ran vertically through the wall. I put my ear against it and heard voices, distant but clear. There's to be in the foundation somewhere. The letters referenced a vault. "We've checked the foundation 3 times, unless it's behind the iron door. Can you get through it? Not without heavy equipment, and not without them noticing." Daniel appeared with inspection forms, counties officially withdrawn, the condemnation order. Brennan put in a good word, said the keep's been better maintained in 6 weeks than most properties manage in years. "Tell him thank you. Tell him yourself. He's coming to the community open house next month." Community open house. We were having one of those now, with refreshments and historical presentations and a commemorative brass horn for people to blow from the tower. My life had gotten very strange, very fast. A commotion near the west corridor drew my attention. Soot had reappeared. He'd been absent for weeks. Now he sat in the portrait gallery, fixating on a different section of wall. Not again. But I walked over anyway. Maggie followed. The students, sensing something interesting, trailed behind. Soot nosed at the wainscoting, at a panel we'd documented but never opened. Too stable, too well sealed. No obvious mechanism. Until now, the panel shifted under Soot's paw. Behind it, a small alcove, and inside the alcove, a ribbon faded silk, child-sized, with a note attached in careful handwriting. "For the next to choose the burden, may you teach your children as we taught ours. May the keep stand another 200 years. May the truth always have guardians. E.H. 2024. Evelyn's handwriting, left here recently. Deliberately. One more secret, one more promise." A student picked up the ribbon carefully. "What does it mean?" "It means," Maggie said, her voice thick, "that some burdens become blessings, and some secrets are worth keeping." I photographed the alcove, the ribbon, the note, added it to the keep's official records. Another entry in the endless documentation of a place that refused to give up all its mysteries at once. That evening, after the last tour group left, Maggie and I stood in the Great Hall alone. "I'd been thinking," she said, "about the future. Dangerous habit. I want to quit teaching full-time. Run the trust completely. Can we afford that? Not yet, but we will. Tours are growing, School groups are booking months ahead. Dr. Chen wants to host a symposium here next year. She turned to me. What about you? Your journalism? I'd been thinking about that too. I'm still a journalist, but maybe a different kind. Telling stories about this place, about places like this, history that matters, legacy that endures. We'd be here together, all the time. Yeah, we'll drive each other crazy. Probably. It'll be amazing. Definitely. We signed the Guardian Ledger together that night. Our names side by side. Joint guardianship. Equal responsibility. The keep settled around us. Its stones breathing the way old buildings do. Content. Purposeful. Protected. Outside, fog rolled over the mountains. Inside, soot curled up by the fireplace. In the walls, the listening shafts carried only silence. The treasure was safe. The truth was preserved. The legacy continued. We'd chosen the burden, and the burden had chosen us back. In the morning, there would be more tours, more repairs, more mysteries slowly revealing themselves in the patient way the keep had always worked. But tonight, we just sat in the great hall our ancestors had built, in the castle we'd saved, in the home we'd made from inheritance and choice, and the belief that some things are worth fighting for. The keep was ours. We were the keeps. And that was enough. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.